Hello, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Football Kit Memories, the football podcast that gets under the shirt. In today's episode, I'm joined by Nooruddean Choudry, who's recently published his first book, a memoir of his life called Inshallah United, a story of faith and football. I've really enjoyed Nooruddean's output over the years, be it on Twitter, articles for The Guardian, or various podcasts that I've heard him on, and I was delighted to get some time in with him to discuss the book in what turned out to be a far more wide-ranging chat than we originally had planned. We cover off his writing process, the imposter syndrome he sometimes felt, and his desire for authenticity, something I can tell you that he successfully delivers throughout his great book. We also chat about his large following on Twitter, what that means to him, and of course, as always, Nooruddean picks out 3 football shirts that mean something to him. Remember, you can listen to this and other episodes of Football Kit Memories on all major audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please do like, follow and share, but above all, please do enjoy the podcast. Okay, so today on the podcast, I'm joined by a man that is an essential follow in the world of football Twitter. It's the bearded genius himself, Mr. Nooruddean Choudry. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good mate. As you'll, because we're doing this over Zoom, you'll realise that at least one and definitely 2 of those parts of that name are wrong. Not definitely not bearded, and you'll soon learn not a genius.
Well, I have a beard and I'm certainly not a genius, mate. So there we go. So look, we were just talking off air there. You've just released your memoir, your first book. It's called Inshallah United, a story of faith and football. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so it's a book about rather egotistically, it's all about me. It's all about basically growing up in the from the late 80s and through the 90s as a second generation immigrant from a Pakistani family who Muslim, born and brought up in North Manchester, working class, and just basically me growing up, falling in love with football, falling in love with sort of various other things like music and film and stuff like that. And it's about as much as it sort of coincides with like this amazing part of United's history and the sort of the resurrection that we undertook under Ferguson.
Mm,
It's also just as much about sort of me finding my identity and again all those things about football that are amazing, like feeling part of something,
yeah.
um instantly feeling part of like a community of fans, that thing of like you can meet somebody from a completely different background and in any part of the world, and if you mention football or if you've got a football top on or anything like that, suddenly it cuts through any sort of social anxiety or
Yeah.
barriers or even language barriers, and it instantly becomes something you've got in common and something you can talk about.
Yeah. So even that you have your own identity, there is something that kind of binds us all together and you can remain different, but also be the same as well through football.
That's exactly it, and again, it's that thing because the thing is, and again, it's very much a trope that people quite rightly take the piss out of on social media, where it'll be like MUFC family and sort of football family and all that rubbish, and so much of it is rubbish, so much of it is performative, and so much of it is simply to sort of get more followers. So it's like if you're part of the family, join, like follow me and all this rubbish, but like it's on a sort of real life offline sort of basis, it's got a root in reality
Yeah.
because you do, and again, like it's one of those things that I've got mates now, and I've got mates that I hold really dear now, that if it wasn't for football, I can't really see how I would ever have met them, or
Interesting.
I'd ever got talking to them and stuff. And like I've got mates who like from loads of different backgrounds, loads of different sort of like ages and everything, and age is everything as well, I think, because like, and I think it's one thing that gets slightly forgotten in terms of the people you meet and the friends that you make through football, is that like there'll be people I know who are 20 or more years older than me, and
Mm.
also like people who are like in the mid 20s now, or like early 20s or whatever. And like I will get on with them, and I would consider them friends.
Mm.
But like, how would like a lot of those friends, like how would I sort of get talking to them? How would I sort of befriend them? And again, it's one of those things. There's certain things. There's football. I think the two big ones are football and music.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
if first of all, there's something so um all encompassing and sort of permeating about them in that even in terms of language, you don't necessarily need to speak English or need to speak another language. Or uh for instance, I love Italian football, and I love a particular era of
Yeah.
Italian football. I don't speak Italian.
Right.
I've not got any sort of like natural link to Italy in terms of family and everything, but football sort of breaks through that, and it's that idea of there's certain things that just become like this membrane that sort of links us together, and football even more than music, because again, that thing about music is music does have a special quality and this amazing way of connecting people. But
Mm.
even music, a lot of the time it's generational. So
Mm.
um, if you meet the average Oasis fan or go to the average Verve concert or Stone Roses,
Yeah.
the majority of the people at that concert or their fan base will be of a certain age, or say
Yeah.
Paul Weller, or sort of say modern day like Wolf Alice or Dua Lipa or whoever. Their sort of fan base, not always but mostly, will be of a certain generation, whereas football's not like that. Football is multi-generational,
Yeah.
multi-ethnic, multicultural. And there's nothing like sport to bring people together, and football is the greatest example of that.
That's really interesting. Yeah. The club remains and your country remains as well in terms of sport as well, doesn't it? Something that brings you all together.
Yeah.
How did the book come about in the first place? How, how was it commissioned and all that stuff? Who asked you to do it and why did you choose to do it?
Um, I was asked to do it by the publisher, and it was there was about a 6 month period where they'd very sort of like politely kind of like say, "Oh, have you thought about writing this?"
Okay.
And I kept on saying no.
Right.
Um, just because I joke at the beginning, but about it being egotistical to write a book about yourself. But in terms of writing a book about yourself, like first of all, I've never written a book before, so I
Yeah.
don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to structure it. I wouldn't know. I even had to Google, like before I wrote the book, I had to Google how long a chapter was, things like that. And I even took a book off my shelf that looked like a average size book,
Yeah.
and then I literally counted the words on one
Wow.
page, and then times the number of words on that page by the number of pages, so I got a broad idea of how long a book was. So
That's I can't believe that. So the publisher didn't kind of guide you. They kind of left you to
well,
your
look,
own devices. They trusted you basically.
well, that's it. But also, I mean, I suppose, like, I'm sure if I sort of asked all these questions to the publisher, they'd have been really supportive and helped.
Yeah.
But I suppose the point I'm making is that like no one, because and again, a lot of this is based around sort of imposter syndrome.
Right.
Is that like um if I was listening to somebody else, if I was listening to this podcast now as somebody else, I would be thinking, oh, like, oh, that's amazing, like they've wrote a book or whatever, but I could never
Mm.
do that because I don't know how. But then like you just do. It's
Yeah.
like it's like anything, like I mean, I don't know your background, but I mean, were you in broadcasting before you did this podcast?
Absolutely not. No, just sort of muddled my way through it and still am, to be honest.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
There's no. I think one of the biggest lessons you can learn in life is there's no manual for anything.
Right.
Like anyone who is success, like people go to university work for all these qualifications in journalism or whatever, and there's definitely a value in that, and there's definite sort of skills that they learn, and opportunities that arise from that. But there's so many people that just do it,
Mm.
and just muddle through, and sort of want to do something so much that they almost ignore their feelings of imposter syndrome, and I can't do it, and just learn it themselves. Whether it's a podcast, it's kind of like, oh well, how do you edit a podcast? Is it
Yeah.
does anybody know? Oh, there's this thing called GarageBand, or there's this thing called Audacity, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not that hard, and like it's that thing of it's, you just do it, and it's the same with the book. So they kept on saying, oh, it would be really interesting to write a book about Manchester United from your perspective, because it's an interesting perspective about all the things that you are in terms of being Asian, working class, Mancunian,
Yeah.
um, and Muslim as well. And that would be a really nice angle to sort of write something about football, and also like I had I'd done freelance work as a journalist. I'd sort of worked on an online publication for like 5 years. So
Right.
like
Right.
so I could write like short form. I could write
Yeah.
articles and stuff, and I could and I knew I could be funny in that. But like writing a right, never mind writing a book, writing a chapter
Yeah.
is so much longer than just writing a sort of a short article with a few quips. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kept on saying no. I kept on saying like no one's interested in sort of what I've done, or my life, because nothing extraordinary has happened. I've not sort of jumped into a river and saved anyone's life. I've not, so like, there's
Right.
been no dramatic moments like that. So I won't be able to write anything. But yeah, like bless them, like, and they saw something I didn't, and they kept on sort of saying, well, just give it a think. Why don't you just write sort of like 3 chapters and see what you think, and then we can have a
Okay.
look at it. So it sort of developed from there, and yeah, and then from that, I eventually sort of was convinced that it was something worth doing, and I had a story worth telling, and a
Yeah.
way to tell it. And then it was just a case of like like what do I include in it, and how much of myself and how much of football do I put in it, because I know you said that you're reading the book,
Yeah.
and one thing you'll notice is that like it's not just chapter upon chapter about what happened to United season on season. A lot of it is me starting school, a lot of it is me in primary school, and and
Yeah.
and, and a lot of it is about me. And again, that was a tough thing to sort of work out, because like how much, because there was moments where I would write, I'd be writing, and then I'd realize that I've written 10 pages, and I've not mentioned football.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So it was balancing that element of it as well, because like he, again, like, and I'm sure the publisher could have given loads of advice, and they would have, but like really, like, they, because it's your story, like what advice can they give? It's kind of like they kind of do have to trust you in terms of
Yeah. Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you'll include. So yeah, there's no manual, and I just did it, and like now it's out, and it's just it's that situation where you hope people like it.
I
It's
think.
it's sorry.
Well, so no, I think like the I'm enjoying it because I think it's written from a very personal perspective,
Yeah,
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm interpreting it is that the Man United stuff is going on in the background, right? And we can all go on Wikipedia and find out season by season what's going on with Man United, but your life is in the foreground and things that are happening to you and your memories. And I think I'm enjoying it very much because it seems very conversational as well. It's almost like we're sat here having a chat or in the pub or something, and you're telling me about like funny memories that happened. And I think you intersperse it really well in terms of there's some great puns in there. It's very funny kind of reading it as well, but also like just like I remember like feelings myself of like these intense feelings of embarrassment at school, and you're able to capture them really well and tell them in a way that's really first person engaging. And I think that's what's great about the book.
I mean, thanks a lot, because I mean, firstly, that means so much. But secondly, it's that thing of, so when I first started writing, because when I've previously written comment pieces
Yeah.
or sort of like short articles, um, there's a way of writing those where essentially you are showing off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there's little jokes that you want to put in there. There's little sort of like flourishes in
Mm,
terms of like a particularly sort of like cutting or sort of like flowery sort of like
mm.
prose that you want to put in there,
I
and
mean, you're writing for
you
the Guardian, you've got to tire
that's
it up a bit, haven't you?
that's it. But like one thing I quickly realized about the book is that had to go out of the window because first of all you can't maintain a style, a particular sort of stylized way of writing throughout a book because it's too long and it'd become too sort of like old very quickly. It'd be old within
Interesting.
5 pages. People would get sick of it. And
Yeah.
second of all, one thing I realized not at the beginning, but while I was writing the book, and it led to I'd written 2 chapters and I had to scrap it and start over again
Oh wow.
because because I came to the realization, and it sort of links into what you're saying about the book being conversational, and it's great to hear you say that because uh it suddenly hit me that like I'm writing as a kid, like I'm writing from the perspective of a kid,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and if I try and be too clever, if I try and sort of like use fancy words or sort of like try and be sort of smart about it, it
yeah,
doesn't ring true. It puts a layer between the reader and my sort of genuine feelings, and it sort of it feels insincere. So I had to go back to the start and just write with like um an honesty and a simple way of writing that's not showing off. I'm not
yeah,
sort of like it doesn't read like I've swallowed a thesaurus. It's
yeah,
just it's just me with my sort of sincere thoughts, and then in terms of anything being funny or sort of like even like profound or whatever, like I couldn't try and do that. I had to sort of like if that naturally came, great, but like
mm,
I couldn't force it because again, like I think most people have got this innate thing where they're sophisticated enough to know in their reading of anything because like we read so many things these days, even on social media, like even reading views on Twitter, like
yeah,
or reading sort of thoughts of people, like you consume so much. And I think people are sophisticated enough in their reading to know when someone's bullshitting or
yeah,
when
yeah.
something doesn't ring true. So I had to just be as honest as possible, and that meant just writing like I'm talking to a mate.
Yeah, I mean, look, that authenticity like really carries through. So yeah, like really well done on that, mate. I wanted
Thanks.
to ask you. You mentioned Twitter, right? I wanted to ask you about Twitter, and obviously you got a big following on Twitter. How did that come about? And then, do you ever feel like you've got a responsibility? Like you love telling jokes, you love kind of pointing out kind of not just stuff in sport, but also like politics and society as well. Do you ever feel you have quite a big responsibility given the amount of followers you've got?
Um, I mean, first of all, in terms of how it sort of started and grew, I think so much of it is luck in terms of when it happened,
Right.
because of what Twitter was at that time or what social media was, and it's different now because I think most people will have noticed that it's far harder to grow an account or sort of be noticed now than it used to be.
Right. Okay.
I
Interesting.
think I think it used to be far more of a meritocracy in terms of if you were funny or if you were different or if you had a point of view or if you sort of looked at things in like an interesting or sort of engaging way.
Mm,
What would happen is people would just organically start noticing it and start sharing it, and then that's how you'd grow an audience.
right.
And from my point of view, like a lot of what I did in the early days was just faffing about with Photoshop and just like making visual jokes and sort of making visual gags and stuff like that. And obviously that lends itself to sort of like people noticing it and sort of like and your account growing. Um, if I was the age I was then now, and I started now just faffing about on Twitter, like no one would notice me, and it
Right.
would be it would be pretty much impossible to gain a following in the same way. It just is. I don't know whether that's about the algorithm, I don't know whether it's just about the fact that there's so many people
Mm.
on these account on these sites now that things get lost, or I also think the way people interact and use social media has changed as well, because what you'll find is in the old days, if if people liked a tweet
Yeah.
or sort of agreed with it, their automatic sort of reaction would be to retweet it.
You're right.
And so what with without, this is very boring, but like in terms of the ratio between sort of retweets and likes, most people would retweet it and fewer people would like it. But
Mm.
now that's totally flipped, where people will still retweet it, but far more people will like it,
Right.
which is great, and that's in a way that's the way it should be. But for any young person now who is brilliant and enigmatic and charismatic and sort of has things to say and is really funny, um, with fewer people generally retweeting, fewer people will see their amazing output.
Interesting.
And so they don't grow in the same way. In terms of a need, in terms of the idea of have I got any
Responsibility.
responsibility?
Yeah.
I, I don't know, because I've always maintained that like it's my personal account. So
Hmm.
because occasionally some people who disagree with my views will say, you've got a responsibility to do this, or you've got a responsibility to do that, and like with all your followers you should not be saying that, and
Mm.
everything, like about anything, but whether they agree with me or not. And like my response to that is always like, I'm just a bloke from North Manchester. Like
Right.
I'm not affiliated with anyone. I'm not the BBC.
Yeah.
Like therefore, like it's just my sort of inane sort of ramblings and my own thoughts. And so I've always maintained that. Like, so I think as an individual, all you can be is true to yourself,
Right.
and sort of and talk about what you believe in, and give your view. And again, the what that means is you will then get like a barrage of people disagreeing with you, especially if it's something about politics
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or sort of socio-economic sort of factors or whatever. Like people will disagree in an angry way, in an abusive way, but you've just got to uh ignore that to a certain extent if you believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um
So again, authenticity is key.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I've tried to do with my account is because I've never taken the amount of followers that I've got for granted. Like I to this day, genuinely, I think it's mad, like the amount of followers that I've managed to garner.
Mm.
And still to this day, I kind of feel as if like I've accidentally been given access to an account that's got loads of followers, and I really shouldn't have them. So, so I what I have tried to do, and I've tried to do this more in in say the last 3 or 4 years,
Mm.
is I've tried far more to a retweet people that I think are worth retweeting, and sort of like if they've said something and they've not got many followers, but it's really important what they've said, I've tried to amplify that. So at the very least, I can use the amount of followers I've got to sort of like give them a bigger platform to sort of like express what they're saying. But
Yeah.
also, I've really tried to champion sort of like people who I think are great. So I've got no sort of like qualms about saying follow this person. They're great. They've got great
Hmm.
views. I've also I've also got like I'm a big fan of stand up comedy and stuff like that. Or like podcasts or books or whatever. So
Yeah.
anytime I like someone, I always say it. I always say this person's great. This YouTube sort of like show that they've done is amazing. You really need to sort of check it out. And
Yeah. Yeah.
at least I think that is good, just in terms of using the platform that I've got, that I'm lucky enough to have, to sort of like sort of
help others, I guess. Like,
Exactly, and
yeah.
just amplify what they're doing, but also, I just think I just think it's kind of good for the soul,
Mm,
and like, don't get me wrong, like we all to a certain extent have an ego, and we all to a certain extent um have times when that ego can sort of get a bit out of control or whatever. So
right.
I always try and guard against that, like so because I don't want to I don't want to turn into like an egotistical dickhead or think I am anything better than what I am. So like so that's why I'll sort of like I'll talk about other people. Also, what I tend to do, and it's partly so I keep my ego in check, and partly so um I get a bit of perspective and don't sort of uh I don't know, like just take a break. Is I will leave Twitter for a few months, a year, like
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
yes. I think that I think sometimes it can be a matter of weeks. Sometimes it can I think the longest I've been off was about 5 or 6 months at one point,
Wow. Okay.
and it's simply because um, I think it's healthy to do that. I think it's healthy to do that. I also there's also been times where I've just thought like this is unhealthy. Like in terms of like everything good or bad that's sort of being sort of I'm seeing the replies like or like all the
Mm,
negativity and everything, or even sometimes like positive things can be negative because it's not healthy to sort of like get above your station and think you're it.
yeah.
So like
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll take those breaks and then I just feel sort of renewed after it and sort of and I'm better for it.
Coming up, Nooruddean shares his football kit memories with me. So, Nooruddean, should we talk about some football shirts?
Yes.
So, the question I ask everybody on the podcast is, what do football shirts mean to you?
I mean, they mean a great deal to me, and I think it's because for me, like growing up, without getting the like violins out or anything like we didn't like I wanted football kits and didn't get them because
Yeah, yeah,
partly because couldn't afford them and partly because it was why would we waste sort of like 30 or 40 pounds on this one item of clothing when you
mm,
need other items of clothing and we've got other things to pay for. So especially coming from a family where like my parents weren't into football. Like it just seemed like a weird hobby to be into and a weird obsession to have, and especially the cost of that kind of thing. So
yeah,
what quite often we used to do is get like little knockoff kits from like the local shop,
yeah.
with even like with a sew on sort of like like fake badge and stuff like that.
I really like this passage in the book. You know, the box kits with the sew-on
Yeah.
badge, like you say, with the shirt, like the shorts and socks. Amazing.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and the thing is that see that particular example is that's my experience. That's I've described it the best way I can in terms of what that product used to look like.
Yeah.
But I've got no idea whether that was a really local thing or whether those were sold in lots of other places and like loads of and whether other people share that experience or know what I'm talking about. So,
I had them. I knew exactly what you were talking about. I had a
wicked.
fake Scotland one, I think, back in that sort of time. Yeah, early 90s.
Even
Yeah, I remember the
even
box.
with this, even with the sew on. Oh wow!
It was the wrong badge, I think. I think my dad told my mum not to sew it on because it was the wrong badge, but
All
it
right.
had the kit. Yeah, full
Yeah,
kit.
that's so interesting. So I find that interesting as having written that bit in the book that it's sort of like I kind of buzz off the fact that other people
Mm,
experienced that and it was a thing. And funnily enough, like just to deviate slightly, like this, you talk about having like a memory
mm.
and sort of like, oh, how do you remember stuff? There's certain things in the book that I thought, did that actually happen, or like was that true? And like this, for instance, there's a bit in the book where like earlier in the book where I'm talking about where I didn't have a club and I had two mates that were
Yeah,
sort of basically saying support United by United fan and support City by a City fan. and then I had a crisis of confidence at one point after I'd written it and sort of sent it off to the publisher, where I thought, like, was my mate Terence actually a City fan? Have I sort of misremembered that? Was it definitely him? Like, I'd hate for like him to read it and think, wait a minute, I've been a Liverpool fan all my life or something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the funny thing is that then so we had a launch event at the National Football Museum in Manchester,
Right.
and it was hosted by a great football journalist called Emma Priestley,
All right.
and she's from Manchester, and she'd read the book ahead of the event, and
Yeah.
she said like I got to the event early, said hello to her, and she said, "Oh, come with me, I just want to show you something." And obviously there's exhibitions at the museum,
Yeah.
and she took me to this picture of a set of young fans at Main Road, and she goes, "Oh, who's that?" And she pointed
No
to her lad.
way.
And I was like, "I don't know," and she went, "That's Terence. That's your mate."
Wow.
I was like, "Shit, it is."
Wow.
And it was such a coincidence, and yeah, it was him. She recognized the name, like who is like a friend of a friend,
That's crazy.
and yeah, so firstly I couldn't believe it, and secondly I thought, oh, that was a real memory.
Yeah.
He was a City fan.
And have those two lads got in contact? Are you still in contact with them?
I'm not totally not in contact with him. So yeah, but one mate who who was my best mate at school called Sajid.
Right.
He we totally lost touch, and he's actually got in touch because of the book. Like, he didn't know he was in the
So
book,
nice. Yeah.
so then he found the book, or he read the book because my name was on it.
Yeah.
Started reading it, and then spotted his name, and sort of obviously read about like what I'd written about him, and now we're back in touch and we'll meet up and stuff. So
That's so nice.
that's a lovely thing about the book. But yeah, so in terms of kits, because we can only really have those sort of fake kits.
Mm.
It's a weird, and I think this must be a common thing, like with a lot of people, is stuff that you can't afford when you were a kid, or you couldn't collect when you were a kid.
Yeah.
When you're an adult, there's part of you that almost wants to make up for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's such a, I think it must be a common thing with people who buy kits or collect kits, and that's certainly the case with me. The thing is, I'm not a kit collector,
Hmm.
but then just thinking about this doing this podcast, like, I realized that I've just over the years I've sort of bought kits retrospectively more
Yeah.
than I thought I had. Like, for instance, uh, the Italy kit that we'll discuss. Like I bought that sort of after the event just because I loved the kit so much, and I couldn't have it when it was around. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like, there's kits that sort of like aren't in my list today, like the Brazil kit from 1990. Is it Topo?
Yeah, I
Um,
think so. Yeah. Topper.
yeah, yeah,
ER, I think.
Topper.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, yeah. I've got that kit. I've
Nice.
got I've got a champion Parma kit.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I've got a. This is weird because my the team I sort of I'm a fan of in Italy is Napoli, but
Okay.
for whatever reason, and I think it's because the kit, to be honest, like I've always had a weird soft spot for Torino of all teams.
Okay.
So one kit I've got is like it's like their top with Beretta.
Nice.
I'm trying to think what the make is. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Might be A6 maybe back in the day.
Yeah, but, or it might be one before that.
Okay.
I can't remember, but yeah, like it's so yeah, so I've
More
actually
than you
got,
think.
yeah, exactly,
Okay.
but I think it's born of, and I think for a lot of people, it's football kits
Mm.
and trainers.
Yep.
Not in terms of buying trainers that are sort of like vintage or whatever, but more in case in terms of like, you couldn't afford the best trainers when you were a kid. So when trainers come up now, like, you want to buy them because you
Yep.
can. So
Yep.
yeah.
I'm with you on both of those things. Unfortunately, my bank account will tell you. So the first shirt you've chosen, you alluded to it back there. So this is the Italy home shirt by Diodora from the 1990 World Cup. How come
Yeah.
you've chosen this one?
I mean, first of all, Italian '90 was my first World Cup, and
Yeah.
as with most people, like the first World Cup you properly experience tends to be one of your favorites, and it was
Yeah.
certainly my favorite. I loved everything about it. There's something about Italians, anything to do with Italy that just sort of is cool. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everything about that World Cup just seems so slick and cool and everything. Like even down to like the graphics that they used.
Mm.
Obviously Nessum Dorma, all that. And in terms of all the amazing kits at that tournament, I just loved the Italy kit. And particularly like I was a massive and still am a massive fan of Roberto Baggio,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's who I always think of, and it's such a cool kit. I've always been a bit of a sucker for like kits that have got like that sheen.
Okay. Nice. The early 90s
Um,
sheen.
I just
Mm.
think it looks like on the football pitch, it looks so cool. And in my head, I don't know why, I associate it with like foreign leagues for whatever reason. It seems as if like it was less a thing, and it might be wrong, but it seems like it was a lesser thing in this country. And for whatever reason, in places like Italy and Spain, they
Yeah.
did have that sheen on the kits, like that sort of
Interesting.
that thing that just made it sort of weirdly seem more glamorous. So yeah, I love it. I love the kit, and I love the actual kit in real life. I love the feel of it. I love the material. I
Yeah.
even like that's my favorite. That's my favorite Italy badge as well.
Mm. Mm.
And the funny thing about that kit is we've just been talking about the sort of cheap kits that we used to buy that we used to sew on the badge.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something about the badge on that kit that it feels as if it's been like hand sewn on, and it's not
Right.
even the circle that's been cut out of the badge doesn't seem perfect. It looks as if it's like
I
almost been
know.
cut out by scissors.
I noticed that the other day. I was looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It must have been a design affectation, or maybe made it try and look 3D or something on
Yeah,
screen. Perhaps I
but
don't
it's
know.
it looked great, and yeah, and this is just a weird sort of like thing of mine is that I mean, first of all, I do love long sleeve shirts. I just
Yeah.
think wherever possible they just look better. But with that Italy kit and with any short sleeve sort of football top, I love shirts that are that with the sleeves have got, I don't know what would you call it, like elasticated or something, like the
The cuff, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, the cuff isn't like
Yeah.
flap. It's not. There's not a flappy sort of like
Okay.
arm. It's got like that sort of like
Stylish.
yeah, that
Yeah.
elastic in it. So yeah, I love that kit, and again, like there's certain kits that even if you just look at the kit, it brings back a player or a memory.
Mm.
And for me, it's both that Baggio goal against Czechoslovakia, where like you've got the silkiest player in the silkiest shirt scoring the
Yeah.
silkiest goal, and also obviously like Toto Schillaci, like the sort of mad wide-eyed celebrations he'd do when he scored, and obviously that was
Yeah.
his sort of big breakthrough sort of like tournament. So it brings back so many memories, and for me, I think with any football kit, especially when you're a kid, um, the great thing is that you imagine you're that player, like
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
imagine you're like in that team, and for me, that kit in particular, just it just me it's to me it just symbolizes like the glamour of football.
Yeah. And the glamour of Italian 90.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Nice. So we're moving on now for your second shirt. So I had to look this one up. So this is Morocco 1994 away by Lotto. Do you know what? I'll let you describe it, mate. Tell me a bit more about this one.
yeah. So there was before like kit started to go down that sort of rather disappointing sort of stage of being generic,
Yeah.
where essentially like the likes of Nike or Adidas would have a template that they then just use the same template on every team. I loved kits that sort of had a uniqueness to them,
Right.
and some kits are still like that, but in particular, like Lotto, I think, especially Lotto of that era,
Right.
are one of my favorite sort of kit manufacturers because they'd mess around with like geometric patterns and shading and sort of like one color sort of fading into another or whatever. And
Yeah.
this is certainly that. It's kind of got like a geometric design at the top, and it's a lovely green, and it kind of blends into white, doesn't it?
Mm.
And again, like one of the I think another kit that Lotto made at the time was that infamous
Yeah.
Fiorentina kit,
Yeah. I was going to
which
mention. Yeah.
yeah, which in some ways is similar, but obviously like has the most unfortunate sort of I mean, if you like look closer, you can definitely see like the swastika design in
Yeah.
there, and I'm sure not for 1 second did anyone mean to do that, but it just means that like because apart from that, that would have been a really really cool kit, but you
Yeah, of
can't you
course.
can't wear it, you couldn't go around wearing it now because you just couldn't
Yeah.
because it would just be very rightly unpleasant to a lot of people, but like
Yeah.
I've double checked. There's no sort of
They fixed this
offensive.
issue on this shirt, haven't they? I think it's a
Yeah,
similar template, but they've certainly fixed the issue.
exactly,
Or if you look
exactly.
closely, there's a hammer and sickle on the sleeve, perhaps. I don't know. They've balanced it out.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, and also it's the fact of like obviously growing up Muslim and growing up with a Pakistani origin, like we didn't have and we've still not got like this like Pakistani player to look up to. It'd be great if we
Yeah.
did, and like hopefully one day soon we will have one. But in the absence of that, especially growing up, you have to find the nearest thing. And for me, the nearest thing, I mean, in terms of non-football, it would be cricket with like Wasim Akram and Wahai Yunus and all that.
Yeah.
And then there was like in boxing, there was obviously Prince Naseem at that time, and even though he wasn't Pakistani, he was Yemeni.
Yeah.
There was so much about him that like he just looked like us, and like he had the same sort of like high fade and stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
there. So it's like in all intents and purposes to us, he just looked like a Pakistani lad. So like we latched onto him. And in terms of football, the nearest thing we had was players from Muslim countries like North Africa,
Okay.
like Algerian and Moroccan players. And so I love that Moroccan kit. And again, I've got such an unusual name, even for a Muslim person,
Really? Okay.
even for like a Pakistani person. It's a really unusual name. And
Right.
the one place weirdly it's most prevalent, Nooruddean, is in places like Algeria and Morocco.
Okay.
So
Right.
the only player that I'm aware of who's got the same name is Nooruddean Neighbor,
Yeah.
who used to play for he played for
Spurs.
Spurs. Yeah.
But it was a different spelling, the first name.
It
Is that
is.
right?
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I think my spelling is unusual as well. I think I
Okay.
think most people spell it the way he would,
Right.
Noordine Neighbor. But yeah, obviously he was a Moroccan player, so that was great. And yeah, and then you had players like Mustafa Haji
Mm.
at Coventry, and what was the other guy at Coventry? Was it Chippo or someone
Yusuf
like that?
Chippo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yusuf Chippo.
yeah, yeah. So they were sort of around the Premier League there and thereabouts. So yeah, so that's why that kit. I mean, just to look at it's amazing, but also
Yeah.
like it's got that element to it as well. And I think we've all got like holy grail kits that we'd like if possible.
Yeah.
Um, like two of mine are um that kit, that Algerian kit
Mm.
that I'd love to have, and also there's I think it's Boca Juniors, and I think it might be like 92, 93 kind of era where it's weird because even though it's early 90s, it feels even more retro. And
Okay.
it's Parmalat, I think,
Yeah.
and it just looks dead cool. But like those are the sort of two kits that like you kind of think, oh, I wish I had that because I'm sure like I'm sure you've got like a vast collection, but like I'm sure there must be like one or two Holy Grail kits that you'd love.
I think you can get anything. It's just whether you're prepared to spend the money on it.
Ah,
And
right,
I,
okay.
I'm just not. Basically, I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a, if you want it that much, but then what are you going to do with it? You spent so
So,
much money on it, you're just going to
so,
hang it up and
so say a football kit now that you've currently not got just fell into your lap. Like,
yeah.
what kit would you want?
I see. No one ever asked me these questions on the podcast. Probably that Germany Italian 91. I think probably
Yeah,
for me is like the greatest one ever. And just have
yeah,
that.
oh, yeah.
Imagine having that in mint condition. But then,
Oh,
like I say, all I'd have to do with it is just hang it up in the wardrobe. I
I
couldn't
know.
wear
Yeah,
it because it's
yeah.
worth too much money. You know, it'd just be
Exactly. It's mad like that.
yeah, it's craziness. But yeah, no, mate, that's a great choice. I like that one. And I had to look that up. I'd never seen that one before. So your third and final shirt, we finally get to a Manchester United shirt. So
Yeah.
this is the Manchester United. I think it's the 0204 shirt. It's the first one by Nike.
Yeah, so this is the one that's got like it's basically it's just a quite a baggy red shirt with
Mm,
like black detailing rather than the thing with United shirts is obviously they're always red, but they tend to either go for black detailing or white detailing,
yeah.
and this one's got like black detailing. It's not that I particularly love the kit. I didn't own it. I've not even got a hankering to really have it, but um it just reminds me of one of my favorite players. Like it's that thing of like you'll see a kit and it reminds you of someone. Like for me, that kit reminds me of Veron.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just loved him. I loved everything about him.
Yeah.
I still love him. I just think he was such an amazing footballer, and it never really worked out for him at United. I think
Mm,
I think partly because he had to contend with that sort of uh, well established and really perfectly balanced quartet of Beckham, Keane, um,
skulls and
yeah,
gigs.
Scholes and Giggs, and it was hard to break through that, and because he was a different player and it's
Yeah.
like he was almost like a between the lines player. He
Yeah.
didn't he was almost in terms of United, he was almost ahead of his time in terms of that would have required like a bit more of a sophisticated formation,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
he just worked. The formation that we had at that time just worked, but it's often seen as like a flop in terms of a signing that didn't work, and
Yeah.
in some ways it obviously is, but I would not have traded that his time at United for it not happening.
Right.
I loved it. I was buzzing when we signed him because I couldn't believe he was coming to United because I loved him so much
In Italy.
previously.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of like what enjoyment do you get out of football? Is it if winning things is all you care about, then fair enough, enjoy that.
Yeah.
If it's sort of bragging rights and sort of beating sort of your local rival, there's a massive virtue in that, and go for it. Um, but I think for me, I will always remember the moments, like the little
Hmm.
moments. It doesn't they don't even need to be iconic. They don't even need to be things that sort of people sort of remember in unison, like in the future. It's just those little moments that make you gasp and make you sort of like think, oh wow,
Yeah.
that was amazing at games, and Veron did that sort of surprisingly often in a
Right.
United shirt. There was if you, and again, like this is how YouTube can be
Deceiving.
uh, yeah, because you can watch footage or sort of compilations of Veron at United, and it
Mm,
looks as if like he was a world beater and like he was the best player in the team, which obviously it didn't transpire like that. But what it does show is like a series of his highlights, and those highlights are these gorgeous passes,
mm.
the kind of passes that a most players wouldn't see, and b the execution of them is so perfect,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things where like a through ball, he could play a through ball and it would get to the player and that player would score and
Yeah.
that would be that. But it's those little things like he'd make sure the same through ball just sort of um curved into the player's
Yeah.
path
Okay.
perfectly, or had the perfect sort of like backspin so it stops right in front of them, and it's those little sort of technical, those beautiful little examples of technique where he could just play a simple pass and it would have the same end product, but
Yeah.
just to sort of like see something that is so aesthetically pleasing,
Yeah.
that's what makes it special, even though it has the same outcome. So, and also the funny thing, the funny thing with Veron is you could get to a game earlier and just watch him and Beckham warming up.
Really?
And one thing that they did in their warm up is they'd stand on opposite ends of the sort of pitch, like widthwise, and just ping passes to each other, just to sort of like warm up.
Wow.
And the quality of the passes that they sort of play to each other uh, was just beautiful. Like anyone who experienced that or watched them sort of like just warm up before a game would know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about. It's that their passes were so perfect and again so aesthetically pleasing and the control was impeccable and it's those memories that sort of make him weirdly one of my favorite United players, even though he didn't really achieve as much as he should have, or even achieve that much at all. But yeah, I'm glad I'm glad he played for United, and again, I think there's something. I think even in players that don't fulfill their potential at a particular club, and especially players who don't fulfill their potential, there's almost something quite romantic in
Mm,
uh not quite achieving what you were meant to. It sort of in a strange way, it just imbues it with an extra romance that wouldn't be there if they were perfectly efficient and perfectly successful and everything went
yeah.
right.
Well, this, I mean, like that kind of personal interpretation of things, like the you mentioned in the book about always getting early to the stadium, taking in the sights and the smells. And if you're not there early, you're not going to see those kind of things where they're pinging it to each other. And you remember that so much more than the actual result that particular day, I'd imagine. It's just so much bigger than the result, isn't it? It's just so much to talk about and so much to absorb within the game of football, I think, and that's what makes it interesting.
Completely, and I think lockdown and what everyone had to go through during that period, including losing people that you love.
Yeah.
Uh, it's such a massive thing that happened to each of our lives that I still think we are psychologically living through a kind of denial
Hmm.
where it was such a terrible thing that we all went through that we've kind of almost imagined it didn't happen
Okay.
but like when you properly think back at it uh it was such an unbelievable thing. It was it was the nearest thing we will come we will go through as a planet to aliens sort of coming down to Earth and sort of destroying our way of life. Like it was
Right.
such a massive thing of like the whole world stopped.
Yeah.
People were being, and it's mad when you look when you think about it back at it in terms of the government every day were addressing the public and saying, "Do not
Yeah.
leave the house.
Yeah.
Do not hug people you love."
Yeah.
Like it's in so many ways it's so fucked up and one aspect of it that in real terms might not seem like a big deal when you compare it to people dying and people not being able to hug their loved ones was that football was gone and football is such a massive thing in people's lives and
Yeah.
one thing that taught us was football is not what happens on the pitch because that was a perfect example of football was purely what happened on the pitch. Football was purely players being sanitized and playing football in an empty ground,
Yeah.
and it felt pointless. It felt sterile, and it felt utterly meaningless.
Yeah.
And what it taught us was football is all about the people you share it with. Share it with. Football is all about the experiences that you have, and it's all about the connection you make with other people. And and I think that for me, that's the most important thing. 'Cause otherwise, it is daft to care this much about a sport and about people kicking a bag of air about.
Yeah.
It's meaningless until it means everything because it's about human connection and it's about memories that you'll never forget.
Well, mate, that's a beautiful place to finish. I think that's great, and I think that kind of enthusiasm and passion really pulls through in the book. So I'd urge people to buy it. It's available everywhere. all good bookstores, as they say. And obviously, I'm sure people already are that listen to the podcast, but do follow Nooruddean on Twitter as well. And mate, just thanks for joining me. Really enjoyed that.
No, so did I. It's great chatting to you. Yeah, thank you.
So there you have it. Massive thanks to Nooruddean for sharing his football kit memories with me. You can follow me on Instagram or get in touch via Twitter or email. Nooruddean's new book, Inshallah United, is published by HarperCollins and is available in all good bookstores. Make sure you follow him on Twitter too. The music you heard was produced by Evil Ed. You can check out his music on his Bandcamp page. There's links to absolutely everything there I've mentioned in the notes section of the podcast too. And finally, thanks to you for listening. If you have enjoyed it, please do spread the word, give me a follow on social and subscribe to Football Kit Memories on your podcast player of choice. Sharing is caring. Other than that, I guess that's it. So until next time with my next guest, whoever that might be, I'll catch you later.